Teleport me! Save me! Save me! Holy shit! Holy shit! Oh my god, I'm built so different. Kid's fucking framed like... Hey guys, what's up? No, it's me. Yeah, I'm here. No, don't worry about it. Yeah, no, I got this. I know, I'll testify. Don't you worry. Hey guys. No, it's all good. No, I can see. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's all good. I love it. I love this kid. Show us the low roll. The Groudon solo? The Groudon solo? 1v4? Sheesh. Sheesh. Moon, welcome in. This is a robbery. I have $3. Here. Why is she in every pull but not actually getting pulled? What the fuck is happening? Why is she in every one? I don't understand. She's in literally every fucking one. I'm so confused.
Or offense or march.
Wow.
Where do we wanna go? Oh, they're so dumb.
They don't call me Sharpshooter Kodak for a reason. All right, good night, y'all. All right, yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. Always scared when I go over that frog that it's gonna sparkle. I swear to Christ. I swear on all that's holy. What was it? That is a shiny Krogunk, yes. Hot. Hot. Oh my god. Hey, did you do a lot of cosplay? Because that costume rocksers. Ready? Go!
No! Skedaddle, skadoodle. I'm sick of you stupid little noodle. Fuck out of here. I'm waiting for like Mewtwo to show up. You know? When you're right, you're right. Make sure to turn the safety on.
Animal?
Hello. Hello, hello. How we doing, gamers? We put some music on. I forgot to do that. That was supposed to be on by now, but it's fine. Is that audible? Surely? Probably. There we go. All right. Well, hello and welcome, everybody. We are here today to celebrate a birthday, and you know, you can't celebrate a birthday without having some kind of celebratory cake, or in this case, cupcakes. And so right now, I am joined by the homies. They're here with me, and we are going to make ourselves some birthday cupcakes. The problem we have run into here is the cookbooks. We got a bunch of them. We bought them. We were ready to go. We got all these recipes. Unfortunately, there was a house fire on our boat, and all of the recipes are gone. We no longer have any idea what we're doing. So this is all going to be improvised. We're going to attempt to make a cake with no recipe whatsoever, and just kind of see how it goes, see what happens. It will surely go well, right? I think everyone has faith in us, right? Everyone in chat right now has faith in us that we will succeed, right? Like,
Not at all.
one's in chat if you believe, two's in chat if you think we will fail this miserably. Okay, we got a one. I see ones. I think that first one I see is a one, which means we got this.
Oh, three?
A three? Oh, okay. We might be cooked, actually.
You've been cooked.
Cupcakes sounds like a recipe for accidental poisoning. Exactly. So we have with us all of the ingredients that we need in order to make cupcakes. Things such as butter and eggs, and there's milk in the fridge. Flour. We've got all of the ingredients that we need.
I'm not seeing salt.
Salt's in the pantry. We'll get it out in a second. And of course, the most important part. But so we have all of the ingredients. We know everything that needs to go into these cupcakes in order to create the finest delicacies known to man. Girl, what are you doing? Get down. She's trying to steal the spotlight. The problem is we do not know in what order they need to go in what amounts they need to go in, etc. So we're gonna have to kind of figure that out as we go. We're each gonna be making our own batch of cupcakes.
We're gonna mess it up so bad.
Is there sugar on the table? There is sugar. I have sugar. It's in a nice little. It's even in like a fancy little like sugar jar. It says sugar on it.
I don't think there's enough sugar.
No, there's definitely enough sugar. Do you see how much sugar's in there?
There is no sugar in there, guys.
There's a lot of fucking sugar in there.
There's not enough sugar in there. We're cooked, guys.
Oh my god. These dudes are about to put 3 pounds of sugar in this shit. this might not go very well after all.
Be very skilled.
Definitely not enough.
Very skilled.
As a baker, we have more.
Cat, you bake? That's crazy. What you bake?
Get the salt out.
I need to know. Homie just disappeared into the pantry.
Disappeared.
Where'd he go? Alright guys, I know this is a Kodak Zach stream, but this might be a WhoDatReaper_31 stream now.
Bro's looking for the salt and he can't find it because he doesn't have any salt.
/ Doobie stream.
This is lies and slander. I want you to know that.
Angel Food. Mid. Anyway,
There's not a lock on here. I can't lock him in. What's I gonna do? Just hold the door. I hear nothing in there.
oh, he's back from Lonnie. Oh, they still got kosher salt.
No, it's on the door. That's salt. That's like what we use about.
Bro, don't worry about it. We're distracted.
You're right, my
We've
bad.
got enough. We have everything that we need. Trust. You guys have not a little faith. And I think we need to hold the faith a little bit more, you know? We are going to succeed here. I think you all need to know that we've got this in the bag, locked down. Absolutely no problem. See, we need more people like Daisuke in chat right now. Believe adjacent, that's good enough for me. You know what? I will take believe adjacent. That's a winning proposition. So what we're gonna do is we're each gonna make our own batch of cupcakes. They're gonna be a small batch of cupcakes. We're going to put them all in the oven, and we're gonna see who can make what closest resembles a cupcake. The most edible final product, I believe, is the winner. This is your welcome. Exactly. We'll take it. All right. So we each have our bowls. They're over there. There's 3 bowls. Any questions before we get going here, or are we just are you ready to ball?
Are these bowls big enough?
Probably not. We'll probably need to get there's a bigger bowl we do have that we can get out here to mix like everything together at the end.
Oh, fine.
The big bowl when we need to like mix the whole thing. But it will be a small batch. Remember, it's only it's 6 cupcakes. It's a small batch of cupcakes. So we aren't making a huge. Can you spell cupcake? No. You got a question? Shoot. And we also have additional hazards in play. You cannot see them, they're off screen, but there is a small puppy. She is playing with her toys in the kitchen currently, running back and forth underneath our legs. So that's a hazard. Are my shoes off? I am not putting the dogs on stream, but they are off. This is not for free. This is not the website for that. I do not have
10 gift subs right now.
I can confirm.
10 subs right now that I will drop the dogs live on stream. 10 subs right now for the dogs. If you ain't baking barefoot, real. See, that's why I'm gonna win. I'm the only one here who's barefoot. Everybody else has socks on. I have bare feet. I got the dogs out. They're ready to go, and that's how I'm going to win today.
Oh,
I know. God damn. All right, shit. I gotta fucking offer my feet more often. Fuck.
that's only one. We take 10.
They're out. Yeah, no, that's only one. We're 1/10 of the way there. This doesn't have to be a single person. It's a community effort. Everybody can work together. Okay. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm good. Wash them damn hands.
Wash your hands first.
Everyone
Yeah,
wash their
that's
damn
everything.
hands.
Live on stream, everybody's got to wash their hands. We got to watch one at a time.
Water first, guys.
I don't care. Gotta rinse it and then get the soap. See? Got good form.
A good lather.
Get it going.
Good.
Okay.
You gotta feed it. And then.
Ooh. Look at that form. This is excellent form. Oh. Well done, sir. Alright, I will take my turn next. So you gotta get that good. Get them good and wet first, you know. It doesn't work if you don't get them wet first. Lesson to you all, kids.
If you so hurt, you're weird. You should go to jail.
Alright, make sure you get in between the knuckles. Make sure you get, you know, the backs of your hands. Everything's got to be nice and clean, right? You can't... Look at that lather. See how much soap? Yeah, there we go. All right. See? Get that nice big lather going on. Really get it going, and then get that nice rinse. Ooh, look at that. Ooh. Is this the content you all came for? I hope so.
Wash my hands now. So I'm gonna do something that none of these losers did, was actually wash in between my fingers. I didn't see any of that happen.
This dude is lying and slandering in 4K. We got the clip. Run it back. Somebody clip it.
They didn't get under the fingernail. If you're handling food, you gotta get under the fingernails. There you go. Nice and lathered up. Got under every fingernail. I'll just keep lathering that puppy up.
See, he's crushing it right now. Look at him go. Look at that lather. This might be a 10 out of 10. This might be a champion right here.
Easy.
Can't have these people roasting me all live on stream,
Bro, he's got to go back for the second round.
I can't have that right now. I got people watching. I can't be looking for this.
Alright, so I'm pretty sure butter is first.
Are you sure?
I believe the butter comes first. I think it's butter. I think it's butter and flour. I think it's butter and flour first, and then you add the egg.
Butter done.
That's up to you to decide. We have more butter in there.
Hey, yo,
If the 4 sticks of butter we have here are not enough, we do have more butter.
How much butter goes in the cake? Let me
Hey,
know.
don't help him. Don't help him.
DM me, whisper me right now.
We do get to phone a friend. Wyatt's out there somewhere.
Wyatt is out there. We can call him. He is an expert. We can phone him up at any time. 20 sticks, but the
God.
more the merrier.
Brother, I cannot count the 20. Like,
26 of butter.
Yeah, I know these dudes through music. They can only count to 4. We're not getting that high.
maybe 8 at most.
All right. I think I'm rocking 1 stick of butter. This stick of butter is a half cup. This is a half cup of butter right here, right? Now, the problem is this has been sitting out for a little bit, but it's still not very room temperature quite yet.
Dude, mine's going in the pocket.
So, no, see, you guys don't understand the master technique. See, you got to get your hands nice and warm. You get that friction going, right? Get them nice and warm, and then,
Chat, I'll make this way easier.
yes.
Chat, watch this shit.
No, see, look at that. See how much this is already melted. Look at that. That is perfect. That is already nice, soft, malleable butter right there.
I'm just going in the pocket for a while.
Did you say malleable? Do you know how to spell that?
Malleable.
What about that one? No. Where's my hairnet? Listen, if we get hair in the food, that's just part of the experience.
To you? Oh, that's cool.
All right.
Your hair's short enough.
I'm dumping my butter into my bowl. These dudes, see, I'm on top of them already. I'm already in first place because I'm the first one to get butter in the bowl.
That doesn't mean shit, dog.
All right, so we got our butter. Now, how much flour? Good idea.
What? I got. You know what? You were dogging on me, Zach. It's soft.
Hey, that is pretty soft. All right, I ain't gonna lie.
Not soft enough. Though. It's going back in the pocket.
All right.
Butter is spilling out. It's on my hands, but it's going back in the pocket.
Bro's gonna reach into his pants later and be like, damn, why is there fucking butter in my pocket?
Forget to take it later.
Alright.
What's butter in my pocket?
How much butter? The real question.
I think it's a fucking use a whole stick of butter.
Bro, I'm saying, I got my one butter. I'm just... Flour, like, it's important. You gotta have a lot. But how much is a lot?
I'm eyeballing it, dude. I'm just gonna eyeball it when I do it. I think this butter's good.
This is, you know what? We gotta mix. You do a cooking stream on a weekend? Hey, I'm saying.
Well, technically today's Monday. It's not
Yeah, this is...
a lie.
It's taken me 3 years to do one cooking stream, and you've already seen how this is gonna turn out, so, like, I don't know what to tell you. Okay. So this goes up to 1 cup. I don't know if we're gonna need more than that.
Oh, this trash
Trash can right here.
You do something about measuring shit.
He's just going in.
Bro's just balling on it. Holy shit. Oh, that's a lot of fucking flour. That's a lot of fucking flour.
It's fine.
We have vanilla, yes. We have vanilla extract. It's also in the pantry. I should find that. I should have pulled that out beforehand.
Dude, we also need the baking powder. Oh my face is actually really fucking.
Are we done? Do we need oil? We done? Do we need... Zach, get the vegetable. Oh, the canola. I don't... Wait, Cat, what kind of oil? Cat, what kind of oil? Cat,
We
what...
got
I think- no,
canola oil.
Cat, what kind of oil?
We got vegetable oil.
You got milk actually?
Yes, there's milk in the fridge.
I'm using milk. Fuck that. I'm not using oil.
No, you need milk too. You don't think
No, I don't think you need oil in it.
Cat,
you either, but
what kind of oil?
if you want to use it,
You're being dumb. Help me.
I don't think you need oil in it. Bro.
on here.
Yeah, it's like box mix stuff.
Okay, doesn't mean shit. I'm not see oil is this. Wait, but like how much though? Like how much? Oh, is that for us to figure out?
I don't think you need oil.
Is that for us to figure out?
We're gamers. Sauce.
Oh.
Oh.
Glory gamers, I have the sauce. We're ready. Got that vanilla. All right. I think I'm gonna do this the old-fashioned way. We're gonna measure this shit out. We're gonna go a nice cup and a half, or 2 cups. Get it nice and look at that. All right. There's one cup. All right, hold on. We're gonna go 2 cups. 1.5 cups. 2 cups. 1.5 cups. I'm going to continue to debate until I stop pouring this and see what happens. That looks...
Bro, take a
You're
shot.
going 2 cups now.
We're going 2 cups now, baby. 2 cups of flour.
And they complain that I put too much in there, yo.
That's
If I just make this exact same thing as Zach does, it's just gonna flip up a coin and it's a better cupcake.
true. You know, you've got a great point. All right. I'm getting...
I'm awful at 2 cups.
Go crazy. Pick your weapon. We have an array of weaponry for you to choose from. I'm taking this one right here. All right, we're gonna get this thing going. We're gonna really knead this baby in here. This butter really gotta. He did wash them for good reason, you know.
I did wash my hands.
All right. This is not feeling like it's correct. I feel like we may have already lost on step 1. I respect that everybody's going with what I went with, though. You guys have enough faith in me that I know what I'm doing, that you guys also did the same thing.
What? And what regard?
That we butter and flour.
I mean, that's like half of the cake, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be in that order.
That's so clumpy, dude.
It's really clumpy.
It's super clumpy.
All right, we're really, you know, getting in here. We're kneading it down.
Nothing's happening. I'm just cutting butter.
All right, this is really going well. I think we're off to a roaring start. I think our butter is still too warm or too cold. Is our problem?
Put it back in my pocket.
Do we have enough butter?
Y'all are so poor that we can't afford like an electric beater or anything.
Yeah, no, I got these dudes working with their hands. An electric beater would be too easy, too
Not
free.
even a stand mixer.
The funny thing is we do have a stand mixer. I just have chosen to not allow you to use it.
Damn, that's actually kind of fair.
There's only one, so.
Exactly. All right, you know what?
You know,
I'm mixing up my approach.
I gotta add some.
Grab a whisk.
Grab a whisk. Yo, these are magnetic. I mean, where the fuck are all the whisks?
That's
usually right here. Does this tell you on any recipes by hands?
My hands tell you how to make a cup.
You know what? It says biscuits, so I'm gonna rock with this.
That is decidedly not the same thing.
That seems like a lot of baking powder.
Yeah, no, you should definitely. That is something you should use very little. I can tell you that right away.
One teaspoon.
I think I have too much flour. I think we all have too much flour.
No, I think this is the right amount of flour. If we were just making a bunch of cupcakes, though.
All right.
I'm gonna say a teaspoon of baking.
Equal parts sugar, flour, and baking soda? That's not right. I disagree with baking soda.
Bro already added an egg.
Bro's got eggs in there. What the hell? I don't think that's right.
How many eggs?
Bro's got 2 eggs in there.
Don't worry about it.
Bro.
I'm just keep mixing this up actually. How was the whisk work?
I didn't find the whisk. I don't know where the hell our whisks are. They didn't wash them in the dishwasher.
Bro, did your parents sabotage?
Bro, they threw.
Mama Kodak threw. She sabotaged us.
Oh, there.
Funky these are.
Now is when we start to truly cook. Look at this. Look at this action right here. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hold on. No. We're getting somewhere with this. Wait a minute.
Dude, I'm actually so tempted to just use my hands.
Honestly, you wash them.
I washed them.
I give you full reign. As the people who will be eating it, I trust you.
It's a matter of Chris, would you be okay with me using my hands though?
I mean, sure, you did wash. You didn't touch your dog recently, did you?
No,
Okay, good.
I don't think I did.
Sugar.
Actually, yeah, true. You cracked Chris, but you didn't wash your hands. Are you trying to poison this? Are you trying to give us?
Bro's gonna give us salmonella. That's crazy. This is how he wins the competition. It's all part of the long plan. All right, see, look, we're getting places with this.
Bro,
This
yours
is-
looks so good.
Wait, his does already kind of look like something.
But do you see mine? I see.
Bro, yours is just flour.
Nah, I got baking powder in here. And a stick of butter.
See, mine's starting to clump up a little bit. Mine's starting to get somewhere. I think I want to add milk.
Yeah, I'm adding milk.
I think I'm going milk then eggs.
I want to get it nice and this is smooth.
Bro, we're out. You need to get a new gallon. Hey,
Question is, how much milk are you adding? I'm gonna just say I'm I'm in a couple.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought too. I'm gonna play it by ear, that cup first, and then we're just gonna kind of ball from
I
there.
mean, this just had flour in it. I'm using the same measuring cup.
Some milk in there. Ooh, baby.
Oh god. Oh god.
Hold on. No. Let this mellow. Hold on.
Maybe I would do. After seeing that,
Let this mellow.
Just said it.
Let this. Hold on. Let this cook. Let this come through. Hold on. We're gonna whisk this through. Hold on. This is thickening. Hold on. It's thickening.
A whole cup.
Hold on. No, we're getting somewhere with this, guys. Hold on. There's a lot of non-believers in chat, but this is looking good so far.
Yeah, can we actually ask just who do y'all think is gonna make the best cupcakes?
Yeah. Could we run a prediction? Could we run a prediction real quick to see? I'm saying.
That's looking pretty legit.
This is.
The milk was necessary.
I'm bringing it to the
The milk was necessary.
It looked like a bag. Does it not look like a bag? I'm saying, I'm getting something. We're cooking with this.
My butter is just still so lumpy. He's cheating. He's got the whisk over there.
That's concrete. There's a whisk right in front of you, my guy.
Why am I still using this? Yo, this actually looks like bread instead of cake batter.
Why don't you send them?
Whose birthday is it? It was my birthday on the 27th. Okay, hold on. No. This is coming together. This is coming together. Hold on. Okay. We're getting somewhere. This is
Like a towels in here?
I might need more milk.
yeah, I think I might need a little more milk too. Mine's a little more solid than I'd like it to be. You know what? We're just gonna eyeball.
Maybe? The thing is, Chris looks really looks like porridge.
Bro's got the eggs in there already. That's why it's so yellow. All right, there we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Did they put the egg? We have not. He's put the eggs in.
I have not.
Neither of us have put the eggs in yet. So it's a work in progress.
Oh, I hate this sound. You hear it?
Get some whisking ASMR in here. Hold on, let's just. Ooh, you like that?
Oh shit.
Ooh. Are you close? Are you close?
No Diddy. No Diddy.
This is not a dirty party, bro.
Chill out. No Diddy.
All right. I think I'm good with this. I think I'm gonna add some eggs.
How did that? What just happened?
It's fucking.
What happened?
Well, you don't have a handle anymore.
All right,
Your handle is.
I'm using my hands. Fuck the bullshit.
Poll up for 3 minutes. All right, we have a poll up for 3 minutes. Who will make the best cupcakes? Vote now.
All right, you know what? I'm using my hands.
I'm going with a crisp 2 eggs.
You guys are just copying stuff.
Anyway, go ahead. Teach around, I guess.
No, I'm doing my own thing.
Sorry about the hand sign.
Ooh, okay. No, it's okay. Alright, look at this. Okay. See, look at that. Alright, hold on. I need to wash my hands now after cracking some eggs. Like a responsible individual. Unlike certain other members of the competition.
Chris might be onto something. Look at his batter, dude.
Literally has a soup. No, this is legit. No. See, Chris may be in the lead right now. His does look legit. But it's just setting up for the comeback. Okay, hold on. Okay.
Now I gotta wash my hands again.
I might need to add more flour to this.
More flour?
I might need to add more.
It's watery, bro.
Yeah,
That actually is soup.
yeah. The eggs have thrown the balance of things off. I think I went too much in the milk, and with the eggs, the balancing is now.
You know, I just realized we probably should have done like one egg at a time.
That probably would have been the smarter option.
I feel like that's what like actual bakers do.
But alas,
We're not bakers.
I am not the smarter option. All right, hold on. We're coming together here. It's coming back. We're bringing it back.
Bro's cooking. Barley's cooking.
Who let bro cook? Unfortunately, there was nobody to stop us.
Bro, the poll is tied right now.
Bro, it's a 3-way tie. Ain't no way.
We know right now.
Bro, you gotta get it higher. Get it higher. Yeah, there you go. That is also soup. Let's be so fucking for real.
I think his is better than yours. Yours is way more runny.
See, yes. That's why I gotta add more flour. See, it's all part of it.
Let me know.
It's still a 3-way tie.
I gotta grab a. I'm using the broken winch. I'm getting all this off it though.
All right. We're putting a little bit of extra flour in here. Under the camera here real quick.
But my flour away. Burning right now. No,
Hold on. Extra.
You know what? A little bit of water in here is not gonna fit.
Okay. A little bit more. Perfect.
This is not working either.
Okay, hold on. No. Now we're getting somewhere. The extra flour has succeeded in its job. We're thickening it up.
You know what, fellas? I'm using my hands. I hope you're all cool with that.
Hey, I'm fine with that.
I did just watch them twice.
All right. Put
Oh, that's gonna be so gross.
pinch of salt in there.
Doesn't look right.
Bro, that looks like pizza dough. What the hell is that? Bro is making something completely different.
I'm trying to like squish the butter in here. I might need more flour.
Yours is so lumpy. I think you're the opposite. I think you need more milk. Never eat anything y'all make. Listen,
Nah, okay.
you try to make something with no prior knowledge of how to make it without a recipe, you know?
Yeah.
Let's see how you do it.
But damn, I can make a mean steak.
Yeah, agreed. Bro does have some mean cooking abilities.
I just can't bake for shit.
None of the three of us have ever baked a cake before, and I feel like it shows. But we're doing our best, and that's what really matters.
You know what, Zach? It's coming together. You see this? It's coming together.
Okay, hold on. He's getting somewhere with this. I feel like I'm also getting somewhere with this. I might need still just a little bit more flour, but
Oh, this is nasty.
all right. Hold on.
It doesn't help that the milk is so cold. It's not melting. It's not going to butter any better.
Your butter's still not.
That's what the chunks are. It's the butter. In my pocket long enough.
All right. Can you?
Oh wait, yeah.
yeah.
Move those.
Gotta get those towels out of the way. Gosh. All right. No, moment of truth. Hold on. Watch this. Okay.
Wait, hold up. That's actually pretty good.
Hold on.
It's actually kind of good.
Hold on. Guys, it's a little soupy still, but like it's progress. I think a little more flour, just a touch more flour will do this.
I'm using my hands. This is embarrassing, guys.
Just a touch more flour.
You know what, Chris? You're saying this is hurting your wrist? Imagine that.
All right. Here we go. Really thicken this baby out.
You know what? I'm getting somewhere. It's just the butter in here, honestly. It's just the butter. Other than that, I feel like this is like low-key kind of.
See, this is good. When Chris cheated, he microwaved his butter. That's the difference. Right?
I don't think.
No.
I don't think that's cheating at all.
That's actually like a defrost option on the microwave, guys. They should have. Yeah, defrost. Yeah, they could have used it too.
Is judging me. That's okay. The point of this stream is that I believe probably everybody is judging us It's quite heavily, and that's the content of it, you know? It wouldn't be very good content if we were just professionals, right? You know, it's not nearly as funny.
Oh my god, my fucking wrist, my forearm, dude.
Okay. I've got something going here. I'm gonna add the piece de resistance.
Oh, this is.
A little bit of vanilla. A little bit.
I think it's nothing, guy.
Vanilla, you got that very little vanilla. Vanilla is very strong.
Like, it's like.
Rose is gonna be strong over there. Yeah, this is gonna be a lot of back. You know, it's kind of just what we've come to the table with.
I'm still mixing this shit, dude.
Yeah, I'm having to mix all mine in too. All right, I've got the eggs, butter, flour, got the milk, got the vanilla.
Hey, you know what? Say what you want. How's this looking? How's this looking? Without films, how is that looking so far?
Honestly,
Lumpy as shit, but
yeah, it's lumpy, but ooh, yes, ooh, yes. That's what we're talking about.
you know, we were talking about noises earlier, Zach.
Oh god. Bro is pounding his shit over there in 4K. Bust out a skillet and make your pancake batter work. Oh my god. You know? Listen, the sugar's coming. The sugar's coming.
Oh, that's fucking fried chicken.
The sugar's coming. It's gonna be there. In fact, I think it's time to add it.
No, I did not add sugar.
Bro has not added sugar.
I
This
think all I have in this
False.
right now is literally just milk, eggs, and flour.
Alright. I'm gonna add. We have a cup that has not. I'm gonna wash this. Rinse it out. Wash this one out. Hi, Keely. Welcome to the kitchen reveal.
Oh my god.
Alright.
But Chris, how is that actually?
It's better than.
It's better than what it was.
Listen, I'm not gonna say that Kat is responsible for this, but Kat also was the one who posed the idea of baking
Yes.
for our birthday. So you know, in two ways,
It's your fault.
there is one person in this chat who encouraged this to happen, and was the one who encouraged us to do it without a recipe. So you know.
Originally, she said one of us is like blindfolded, or
Yeah, but then we would have at least known what we were doing. This, I feel like, is worse. Alright. Get some sugar in here. Get some sugar in here.
Oh, damn, you know what? Before I just keep going, I think I need to add more.
Okay.
Oh god, it's all. Oh god.
Alright, we got some sugar. Sugar is going in.
Oh god.
Alright. Alright, sugar has been added
Oh god.
into the batter.
It's shit like this.
Bro, what is happening over there?
I'm making cupcakes, dude.
Bro's making something, all right. I'll give him that.
You know what? You're getting the shit talking right now.
An interesting order of listen, we are doing our best given the scenario we've been put into here. We added wet ingredients before dry ingredients, and I've realized that was not correct. But we learn from our mistakes, and we get better because of it, you know? Oh, brother. Bro is struggling over there.
I am. I'm just washing my hands.
You need some sugar?
Yes, I should.
You probably should have some sugar in your cupcake batter. Yes, I would say that's a good idea.
Question is though, how much sugar?
That's for.
That's for God to know and for us to not find out. Bro is just
We're just
putting as much in as he feels.
I don't know how hard this one is.
A lot. Everybody in chat is saying a lot.
I did whatever 3 of this is.
I don't think that's enough.
No?
I did like 6 of that.
Whoa.
And I still feel like I might be a little light.
6? You know, I'm gonna go for a clean 8.
Alright.
And 8.
Bro, he ate for real.
For real. So with that, we're almost out of sugar.
See? I told you we had enough.
No, I told you we don't have enough. Oh, I need some salt.
There's more in there. I just need to find it in the bag.
It's like, I really don't know what the hell happened with this handle.
Bro's trying his best, you know?
I really am. You know, we're gonna do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt.
Okay, I still do see one little lump of butter. It's like 90% melted in here. So... Oh my gosh, Leaf!
This is his house.
This is my house.
It's his house. Yeah.
I'm gonna add some vanilla. I'm not gonna call that good.
Alright. Come on. Really work this baby in. I'm getting a nice workout in. I'm going to, I'm gonna look like I've been jacking off for weeks. I'm gonna have one arm that's really fucking buff.
Hey, yo.
I deny it. I'm gonna go 2 half teaspoons.
Yo, look at all these
I
subs.
got one of those too.
So true. Thank you, Leaf, for the 21 months. Keely, thank you for the Prime sub for 2 months. Appreciate you all. I'm glad that this is the content that you guys are so excited about here. You know, I know that, like, I'm pretty good at, like, Pokemon and, like, you know, I play a lot of other games. You know, we just started Zelda. You know, there's a lot that's, like, to be excited about from, like, a gameplay perspective that I'm really good at, you know. We beat the new Zelda in, like, 20 minutes yesterday. It was an incredible speed run. I'm just that skilled, you know, but I'm glad to know that you guys are here to support the baking endeavors as well. Whoever wins the house.
True.
You know,
Zach about to be homeless.
in the condition that we're gonna leave this thing in, I don't know if that's a win.
It might not be.
I'm gonna add a little more sugar.
Oh, there we go. Look at this now. Lumpy again. But you know what? Oh.
There we go. All right.
You know, I just realized, what's the difference from adding softened butter to just melted butter? If we're adding in the same amount of butter, would it make a difference if it's melted or softened?
I think there is a difference in the consistency.
Yeah, but like if it's gonna be a paste like this, would it matter?
Yeah, but you want it to the softened butter still has some thickness to it, where like melted butter will be just a liquid.
I suppose. I guess you're right.
All right, hold on. This is coming together. Gamers, I need you to see. Look at that. Ooh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. You guys, see, this is why this makes great content, right? It's like a train wreck. You guys cannot look away because you're so terrified for what could possibly go wrong in the future, which is probably going to be everything, but still. All right. Look at
You know
this.
what? I gotta say, mine's looking legit. This is looking legit.
Wait, actually, he kind of right, really.
Who voted for Griffin? Who voted for Griffin? Because they might be winning here.
Y'all were shitting on me. Y'all were hating. Making fun of me for using my hands. Actually, I can't. Like, y'all were very supportive.
That was, I think, the only thing that we were supportive about.
Yeah. Look, I got everything. Oh, Cat over here voting for Chris?
Damn.
What?
I see how it is. That's crazy.
Like, the crazy thing is, I'm not even using the whisk. I'm using fucking.
Maybe that's the sauce, is you actually had it right the first time.
Well, I'm just holding it over, so. Over and over. So.
See, so my problem that I'm running into now is the middle of mine is thick, but the outside is very soupy still.
That's when I get the spatula and fold it in on itself.
You're right.
Scrape down the sides. Get whatever extra flour you have on the side. Push that shit in there.
Right, you're right. Let me look at this thing. Get all the old butter off of it.
Now, the thing I'm concerned about is how long do we bake this shit for, and how hot?
Damn, you right, for real.
I'm gonna say 425.
I was gonna say 400.
Okay, hold on. Oh, good lord. Nah,
I don't think this is a good time for that.
was that 10? Was that 10?
Sure as hell looks like it.
Oh, good fucking look. You want me to get the dogs out now? Of all time?
Yeah, put it in your bowl. Put it in your bowl. I'll eat it.
No, 9. Okay, cool. We're safe then.
We're at 9.
Okay. She kept us safe. All right, look at this. See, we're get some of this flour that's on the side and get it into the mixture here. Yep. Really thicken this baby up. Just this last little bit. Ooh, yeah.
You're welcome, Zach.
Bro down the table wants to see the
can already see them.
He can see them from all the way over there. And he's still. It's crazy. All right.
Hey, yo. Whoa.
It's just dirty, bro.
Yeah, they're kind of dirty.
Dirty, though.
You're not seeing the bottoms of them, though. That's gonna be another 10 gifted.
No, that's 20.
Oh, another 20?
That's 20. Bottoms of the feet is 20. Tops is 35.
You know what?
I know that's the money shot. Big man, a little? In what?
You want like size 15?
Yeah, I was about to stop like, bro, little. I ain't never heard my feet described as little, but goddamn, all right. You learn something new every day.
I need the whisk again because I need to get rid of the rest of these butter clumps.
I think all my butter clumps are pretty much gone.
I gotta say, dude, I might be cooked.
Yeah, you might be.
I gotta get rid of the lumps.
Oh, no, his shit's actually good.
Chris, we might be fucked.
No, but that is actually good.
No, guys, look, from watching like baking games in the past, I remember them doing this thing where they like lift up and they can make like an 8 with it.
Yo, we're cooked.
I can make a. Might need more flour.
I don't think you need more flour. I think you just need to start over.
Wait, no, hold on. I made an 8. Hold on.
Is it like runny 8?
If I could.
You might need a little bit more flour because I think you added too much milk. Maybe?
Yeah.
Also, I think just us doing this in the wrong order of like dry and wet ingredients kind of fucks us up.
Definitely made this more runny.
I already see it.
I think you need more flour.
the amount of cupcakes that this is about to make is gonna be concerning. We do have non-temporary things if we need to use the remainder of this. We'll bring these to the neighbors, guys. Don't worry. We'll bring these to the neighbors. They're gonna love them. We're gonna have so many extras, and they're gonna be so happy to receive some cupcakes from their beloved neighbors.
No, they're gonna think we're poisoning them.
Well, I mean, I say they don't maybe deserve that, but you know.
Have they even?
Oh, well, mail Leaf some. Leaf wants some. Yeah, you know what? Actually, that's what we'll do. Charity stream starting right now. If you donate to charity and give me a receipt, I will not send you these cupcakes to your front door. This is a threat. You must donate to a charity and show me a receipt, or these cupcakes will show up at your house, and I will expect you to at least try one of them.
This game working.
Probably.
I just don't want like bits of plastic falling.
All right, hold on. We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. Look at this.
Gotta keep going. Keep going.
This. Look at this.
Fork might be good. Can I use a fork?
Yeah, they're farthest drawer. Drive one to you? Absolutely. Actually, no, you come pick one up.
Oh,
You can't be that busy, right? Come next weekend. Come pick one up. All right. Hold on. I think we're getting somewhere. There are a lot of people who do not have faith, and we're gonna collectively prove them wrong. Everyone here thinks this is a disaster.
Chad, this is not good.
Hype chest? What the fuck is a hype chest? I got a balloon animal. I don't know what that means, but I got a balloon animal. Not a cat of faith. You know, I'm typically not a man of faith myself, but in this scenario, I believe in us. I believe in mankind, that we can persevere through any hardships and save the day.
Sure.
Should be pick the biggest nightmare of a stream and can't look away. See. You gotta go higher. You gotta go higher. Still higher.
Higher.
Higher. Back up a little bit. There you go. Bro, that is milk. What? Bro literally made a bowl of milk. What the hell is that? That shit is like straight liquid.
Yours is more liquid than mine.
No, yours is way more money.
Yours is a soup.
That actually, that shit would be fire if we had to make pancakes with that.
Bro, I'll bust out the griddle right now. A couple of these extras on it. Let's see what turns out better. We might have the real kind of cake. We'll have pancakes instead.
I mean, it's a type of cake, so I mean.
I'm saying it could work. Maybe pop some like powdered sugar on there. It's a dessert. Yeah, it counts.
I don't know how to say that.
Yeah, I'll be honest, Chris. I don't know how to save mine, and yours is more liquid than mine is.
I'm just trying to get rid of all these fucking clumps. That's my issue.
Is the oven preheating by chance? No, it's not.
No.
Of course
I
not.
decided what temperature to cook these at.
I'm putting my foot down on 425. If you want to do 400, you can put yours in first and be done before mine get in there. I say 425.
How long?
I have been informed that maybe 425 is a bad idea. By no means in particular, I think we should do 350.
Why 350?
I don't know. It came to me in a vision. if I were to say bake 350, look at that. It's preheating.
Chat, we're doing 350, I guess.
For no reason in particular, and because of no help from outside sources.
Wait, we got narcs out there?
We should have called Wyatt. We should have called Wyatt.
Oh, let me see.
Couldn't let that happen. It's okay, I understand.
Uh-oh.
Bring him over here so they can hear.
Why'd even answer?
Yeah, bro's gonna ignore us for real.
He probably has homework.
Hey, yo,
Wyatt!
we phoned our friend.
Wyatt. So we're baking the cupcakes right now, right? All right. I'm just going to show you around to each person's batch so far, and I want you to decide who's doing well.
Low-key is probably great.
It's definitely good.
So here's Zach's.
Paper pig.
No, it looks really good. Look, see, that's
Too much mixing.
Okay.
oh, that's the problem. We mixed it too much.
Here's Chris's.
That makes.
All right. Here's mine.
They are not very inspired. They do not have a lot of faith.
Is it good? Okay. What do we cook?
All right, we phoned a friend. Hold on.
What should we cook these at?
You're making cupcakes, right?
Cupcakes, yeah.
I'd assume the universal baking temp of 350.
Let's go, Wyatt.
All right, you real.
That's my goat.
But you know, well, don't tell us how long though. Don't tell us how long to bake them.
No, we'll figure it out. We got this.
Yeah, we'll just throw it in there and see how it works out.
When in doubt, good to know. All right, we'll keep that in mind.
All right, thank you, Wyatt.
Hello, welcome in, Raiders. How are you?
Face the fuck up.
How was your stream? All right, so they told me to stop mixing. I've over-mixed mine, and that's why mine is bad. As it turns out, mine's been over-mixed, but it'll be fine. Hello, Raiders. Welcome in, everybody. My name is Kodak Zach. I am a variety streamer, and right now we are cooking some cupcakes for my birthday with a couple of friends. I thought you would say your names, but yeah, that works too. And the trick is, none of us have ever baked cupcakes or a cake in general at any point in our life, and we are doing so without any recipe whatsoever. It's going really well. Don't let anyone in chat tell you otherwise. This is going swimmingly, and I think that it's going to wow everybody. Don't sniff it. Honestly?
I think it needs more vanilla. It needs more vanilla. Can't smell anymore.
No cap. It just smells like pancake batter.
You know what? No.
Bro, we made some bomb-ass pancakes, if nothing else.
Low-key.
All right. Chat, it's the moment of truth.
Oh shit! I forgot we actually had the
Chat.
form.
It's the moment of truth. Let's,
That feels.
we're going to,
You know,
put
I
these.
think these little clumps of butter, it's gonna melt when it bakes. I think it can
You're so right, man.
be fine.
It's gonna. It's at 140 right now. It's getting there. The truth says you're fucked.
This butter. It's salted butter!
Yeah.
Are you supposed to use unsalted or salted butter?
Oh shit.
I mean, there's both in there, but I think we're a little too cooked.
We're way past.
we're in too
Yeah,
deep
we're
on that
too
one.
deep for
All
that.
right, here we go. Look at that pour. Oh, that was way too much.
That was.
Oh. Chat, what do we think?
Put it into like piping bags?
Hey, something tells me that we shouldn't.
Chat, what do we think? How does it look?
A source in this world told me we probably shouldn't use something better.
I mean, I can't lie. Okay.
Okay, high key though.
High key. Zach, I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, there'll be a baking pan under it. It smells like sugar. You got that going for you, at least.
I don't want to keep mixing because apparently we can overmix.
Yeah, that's something that, you know, I hadn't considered the idea of.
Didn't know that was an actual thing.
You know what? We're using a piping bag.
You know, I'm gonna call this good. I'm just gonna call this good. Break down the edges a bit. Get this off.
You said you'd stop. Listen, they're still going. I have stopped. I am a good listener.
I'm not a very good.
All right, I'm stopping now. I'm stopping now.
All right,
Stopping the
look at this. Look at this. So now we, you know, I thought this through and then didn't think it through quite enough.
The sink looks wild right now. It's like vomit.
I. At the bottom of the bag before filling the piping bag. Yes, I have come to that realization. You're correct. You know.
Nice.
Okay, we have so many. Listen, we said we were going to make cupcakes. We did not say we were going to make edible cupcakes. So let's make one thing clear. That's what the bonus batch at the end where we actually have a recipe.
Folks, never be afraid to use the Betty Crocker shit. It works just as well.
It worked just well.
No, don't stress yourself with this shit. It's not worth it.
Look at this. Look at this. Okay.
Oh god.
Unless you're really good at it. It's not.
Okay, hold on. Look at that. Look at that. All right. We're getting somewhere with this. Somewhere we don't want to be, but somewhere nonetheless. Ooh, baby.
You know what? Before I even just start pouring, I'm gonna clean up a bit. We're gonna clean as we go, check.
Like glue. It's so sticky.
What is your bag?
Batter? Oh no.
Shit.
Yeah, no, you're fucked, dude.
This shit is really sticky.
That's not our problem.
Is that bad? Chat, let's be honest. Is sticky a bad adjective for cupcake batter?
I say just leave it.
All right, see,
We were told we were making, when we first were told about the stream idea, we were told we were making cakes.
yeah, that would have gone much better.
So I feel like pancakes are just as fine as
No,
but
I agree.
I feel like the judging criteria is going to be heavily skewed.
True.
Listen, the piping bag was not working. I had the idea did not work, okay? You know, sometimes you have to be willing to admit your fault and say that the idea didn't work.
Chad, I'm not a baker. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing.
We do other
New plant.
Yeah, I was just saying, I need a spoon just so I can
Scoop.
But where
We scoop.
what liners at?
right there.
Right. Okay. If it's sticky, I think that's more gluten from the overmixing. That makes sense.
You know what? That's just
Mine
science.
was mixed.
That's just science at this point.
Mine was mixed a lot.
Chad, no one said we were good at chemistry, right?
Okay, hold on though. The second couple, you know, after I spilled the first one, the second couple kind of look like cupcakes. Okay. All right. Look at that. Look, aside from the first one, that's really not gonna be great. We'll ignore that.
I really think so. The best at science in school.
My ass was good at math, not science.
Hey, I can't even lie. I kind of crushed in science. But like, I'm not translating it very well. I'm sorry.
These guys are gonna be so impressed when we get a recipe next and we fucking crush it. They're all laughing now, but then they're gonna be like, damn, okay. These
Yeah, we can read.
Yeah. These idiots know how to fucking read.
I fucking hated English. So like I was really bad at whenever you do like independent reading or like reading out loud in class. So you know, a recipe might actually hinder me.
Bro said he would do worse with instructions.
I probably will.
Crazy.
Boom. All right.
All right, if we ignore the first one, I think the first one didn't happen. The rest of them don't look too bad, right?
I'm scared. Zach, can I just use that tool you used?
Yeah, just
I want to make sure I really rinse it off. I don't mind being contaminated.
yeah, you know, you wouldn't want your masterpiece over there. All right, the oven is at 320,
We got a little bit of things.
so we're almost there. I'm gonna make sure we got a baking sheet to put under these.
Oh yeah. You don't want it to. Wait, we don't want to overfill these. I just realized.
Yeah,
I feel like.
what my first one.
Yeah, I feel like your other ones. That's
My other
actually
ones are
ideal.
good.
I think
That
that
first one is really bad. I almost want to like spoon a couple out of that first one.
is really gonna.
You know what? I'm gonna do exactly this. We're gonna spoon a little bit of that first one. Just you know.
Oh look at, dude! I can't even lie.
Holy. Okay. We see you.
It's lumpy because of the butter, but you know what? The butter's just gonna melt.
They won't be done for redacted amount of time. Yeah. No. We got this. I believe. We're gonna be watching them like hawks.
No.
So
No.
we're gonna be keeping our eyes peeled to make sure that we know when they're done.
I think that right there.
That looks like a good amount to me. Those look like cupcakes. I'm not gonna lie to you. That first one looks like a cupcake.
It looks like a cupcake. Chat, I might have crushed this.
Guys, I think Griffin might be goated. Glass of maple whiskey or Kraken rum? Maple whiskey. All right,
Oh god. It's just
chat. It's been real. I am sorry in advance.
Well, hold on, bro's already putting them in. I don't think we can.
I was like, I don't think so. Probably need to.
Won't overcrowding it affect the...
Yeah.
But you know what? That looks like cupcake mix. That looks... Chat.
It does.
That looks like it. Wait, angle a little bit down a bit. Yes.
I'm pretty good. I'm saying. I think we have a clear front runner. Listen. The good news we have is the frosting is pre-made. Oh god, not another one. Water bomb this! Welcome in! How are you? How was your stream? Thank you so much for coming through. The frosting is pre-made.
Hey, I would say it was cheating, but honestly, it's a god, like, I'm glad that we're using pre-made.
So we have a chance. There's a chance that this is still edible because we can just frost it. We put baking powder.
I put baking powder in mine.
Yes, there is baking powder. I think, Chris, you used baking powder? We all did put baking powder in ours.
That was like the first thing I put in.
That was not the first thing I put in. I put mine in after the flour and the butter, but whose birthday? It's my birthday. It was on Friday.
This is taking forever filling these up. That might be a good thing.
think it could be good. I think that means that your consistency is good. You're not too soupy.
I'm gonna make just a big spoon.
Oh, look at this. The professional craftsmanship. Did I add the hot sauce? Oh, let me add some.
Forgot the hot sauce.
All right, I'll throw some hot sauce in mine. Anybody want some mayonnaise? Maybe some soy sauce?
Dude, I'll put soy sauce on.
I got mustard, sour cream, and you know the options are pretty endless. I will say.
You know what the crazy thing is? I feel like
At least you did powder. So they'll rise. Hopefully, fingers crossed that they'll rise because we have the baking powder in there.
first action was kind of sick. I can't remember. It was good. You know, at first we were all like fighting each other, but I feel like towards the end of this, we really came together.
We supported one another in our times of struggle.
Really did. You know, I really appreciate you guys.
See, this is what it's all about right
This is
here.
what bacon's about. It's being with those who you love.
I don't even know these guys for real. They hate me. I'm
We
okay,
did
actually.
use 6 eggs, which I feel like is right. All of us used 2 eggs. So I feel like that part was right. I feel like where I fucked up was I didn't add the sugar until too late. I feel like where else I fucked up is I mixed it too much. Those are my 2 shortcomings. 2 eggs, good. See, we all used 2 eggs. We all agreed on 2 eggs.
I can't tell you how much of anything else I had. 2 cups of flour.
I had like a cup and a half of milk and I think 2 cups of flour. God, Wyatt would have fucking crushed all of us. To be fair though, Wyatt being here, we would have all cheated off of what Wyatt did. We would have all just seen what he did.
No, we would have made White go last.
Yeah, quickly just solo. Sorry I'm taking so long, guys.
No, you're good.
I'm trying to get over this.
No, we want this to be the best possible. So I support your endeavors.
You know, at first this was a competition, but I feel like now we're actually just having fun with it. Alright. Chris and I's. Oh no! Okay. Save it.
Yeah, we were shitting on each other, but it's like we can't really shit on each other.
Yeah, because we don't know what we're doing.
None of us know what's going on. So like, you know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, that's what the later batch is for. We're gonna look up a recipe. We're gonna try to actually salvage this in some way.
There we go. You know what? All that good. Dude, that's legit.
That's beautiful.
Like, it's holding its shape. Oh, he crushed it. Goes right there.
Oh, cookie
Some-
string. Maybe.
Oh yeah, Wyatt, for sure. When you come back, we're doing cookies.
Oh hell yeah!
Wyatt knows cookies very well. I can't see that. Big on is?
All right.
I'm having it at a disadvantage. Mine's on the top right.
That might be an advantage. Your tops round a little better.
Yeah, but the inside's gonna cook as well. Alright, you know what?
Turn the light on in there so we can look in. So we can see what we're working with.
Now we're just on our own for timing.
Yeah, it's 10:22 right now when we put them in.
Let's set, I'm gonna have mine in there for.
I'm thinking like 10 minutes,
I'm
and then I'll
thinking-
check it.
13 minutes.
All right.
I was gonna say like a string. But you know.
I'll check it in 13.
Okay.
Gauge it. Get toothpicks?
Toothpicks, yeah.
Yes, toothpicks are gonna come in
We'll get the
clutch.
toothpick check.
There we go. I know a little bit. Also, now we can use this time to clean up. I feel like we want to keep this stuff up, but no, sure.
Oh, not that toothpick. We'll use that one.
All right.
so we have a few minutes while those are in there. Do we want to look up the recipe now?
Yeah, we probably should.
All right.
Can someone just link one?
Yep.
Go into Google.
Link in the chat.
Cupcake recipes. Vanilla cupcakes that stay moist for 4 days. All right. This is on Recipe Tin Eats. I don't need the backstory of it. I just
Bro's learning the history of cupcakes.
bro, they're dead ass fucking.
Or we could just ask Wyatt. That could also
That actually would be
work.
easier. Wyatt. Wyatt, cupcake recipe, go.
Buddy,
Okay,
help.
plain flour. We did.
Uh-huh.
Eggs at room temperature, not fridge cold. Ours were out for a little bit, but I think they were still cold.
Yeah, now they're warm.
Yeah, right now they're warm, but they were still cold, I believe. So that was a mistake. Baking powder, not baking soda. See, we got there.
We got that.
Milk, got it. Sugar, Oil, 1.5 teaspoons of oil.
Fuck! I didn't add oil.
Got in that oil?
No, I didn't add. I think you just need milk.
Oil?
I did not add any oil, no.
Oh.
Vanilla extract.
That's right. Now you did it. I did it.
Use a handheld beater instead of a stand mixer for small batch batters like this. See, I was right. We were cooking. You're supposed to start with the eggs and sugar and whip those first. None of us did that.
We all started with butter and flour. I think it's the worst choice.
I think that's the worst option we could have gone with. Then we gently fold in the dry ingredients, the flour, baking powder, and salt. Then we gradually add that mixture into the egg mixture. And then we whisk together with the milk and butter.
Wasn't it you, Griffin?
All right, so
What do we have? Do we add oil? We don't add oil when we make cookies.
all right, so we have the redemption chance.
Why is genuinely upset?
We have the redemption chance. We have the big bowl.
I feel like that's a genuine Wyatt reaction right there.
No, we don't add oil. We don't add oil when we do cookies. Oh God.
Oh, the mix.
Oh, the mixing. Oh yeah. Yeah.
The
that
mixing,
one-
yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah, that was just well. My idea was just make the same thing Zach makes. That way, no one can tell who wins.
True. But now, all right,
Really dropped the ball.
it's
Probably all did.
yeah, that's just
Solely
fine.
on that part. Just
All right, so we need to do the eggs and sugar in a small bowl first. That's where I'm like, we can mix it all in a big bowl. We can separate bowls for the other stuff. Let's need to find the sugar in there though, because that sugar is.
Oh yeah, we have no more sugar. But you know what? You were right. There's actually the right amount of sugar in there. Bro was actually kind of cooking with that.
Cat, that's wild. No, I don't think that. No,
What's she saying?
that's a little wild.
What's going on?
That's actually crazy work. No, that's actually.
Makes all 3 batters. That sounds dangerous.
I want to live.
That sounds dangerous.
There's also gonna be like enough cupcakes to feed this whole city. It's gonna be so many cupcakes.
I kind of want to wake up in the morning, Cat.
4v3. Ooh, they a lot of people want us to do it.
I don't want to wake up with food poisoning.
You wanna wait and see how these cupcakes are.
Yeah, let's see what happens with these ones and if these ones are going to kill us or not. And then we'll worry about. Okay. We're gonna crack 2 eggs into this bowl. 2 eggs into this bowl. This is now a team effort. We're doing this one
Hello there.
as a team. Like hello! Yo, welcome Raiders. How are you? How was your stream? What did you get up to? How was Pizza Tower? Hope you are doing well.
Oh, that's awesome. Crushing it.
Beautiful. Look at that. This is the power of teamwork. All right. Now we need sugar, and we need a lot of sugar.
How much sugar?
Does this one have a measurement?
a lot of sugar.
They don't have a fucking measurement on it. Fuck this one. We're not doing this one. It doesn't have measurements. Yeah, we're at 7 minutes right now, so.
I gotta be honest, nothing looks different in there.
That's promising.
Cheese weights?
Got horrible posture anyway.
All right, I got one. I got one on food.com. This one says 3/4 cup of sugar. I think that's more than any of us added by like a good margin.
Well, how much is that like big scoop right there?
Eight of that? That might have been. I filled my this one up a little less than halfway. Which actually I think I put a 3/4 cup in, but I just put mine in late. So
Why, I got mine in there. I'm going 13 minutes at first just to see what they look like, and then I'm gonna see if I need to take them out or keep going.
yeah, I said I'm gonna check mine after 10 minutes. But I've got the light on so we can look in there without having to actually like open it and disturb them. So we'll see what it looks like in 2 minutes. All right.
I'm scared. I feel like we're gonna have to go longer than.
Yeah, I think 10 minutes is a low end. That's where I want to see where it's at after 10 minutes, and we can kind of keep going from there.
Yeah, you don't want to open up the oven door. You don't
Yeah, exactly. See.
let cold air go in.
We understand. We know what we're doing here. We are professionals. All right.
True, they are sleeping. Yo, mine's actually kind of raising. Like, mine's kind of rising.
3/4 cup of sugar. Up there. No. There you go.
Dude, that's perfect.
Bro. Saying. When I'm not like, that's what I'm doing.
That's a lot of sugar. None of us added that much.
Yeah, I don't think any of us got quite that much. I think you and I were close. I don't know how much you added.
It wasn't that much.
All right, let's get this situation cleaned off so we can use this. Let me know how they turn out. We will. We'll make sure to keep you well informed on if we've died or not.
Have a good night, Wyatt. Bye, buddy.
All right. Sure.
Oh, you can see mine rising there.
Oh,
Actually,
shit, it's rising. His is rising. It's been 10 minutes. None of them are nearly done, so. I'm gonna... He's got a Wix. What the fuck? This one says the cream, butter, and sugar. So light and fluffy. Then beat the eggs in one at a time.
We're reading a recipe and we're still fucking it up somehow.
I told you. We're gonna fuck up. Oh, we got this.
That looks horrid.
Just the start.
No, like that's actually kind of looking like how Chris, that's what yours looked like at first.
Gotta keep it light and fluffy. Keep it light and fluffy. Oh. Right? And then we gotta get butter. Our butter is room temperature now. Oh, that's nice and soft. Look at that. Cool. In there. Yeah. All right.
I don't think this is big of a bowl.
Yeah, we may need to up the size of the bowl a little bit. Should have broken that up more before I put it in there.
I feel like we should like cut the butter up a little
Yeah,
bit.
that was definitely the right idea.
Because now you just got a whole stick of butter out the end of your voice.
We learned nothing from watching Martha Stewart earlier.
Yo, we that's had Martha Stewart on. We only saw her make the frosting, but we still learned nothing.
Chad, did y'all know Martha Stewart was 83?
Right. I've been like a day over like 60. I'm saying.
What is that? She didn't age.
How we're getting this? We gotta get this nice and whisked in there. See, now the butter's all chopped up, so it'll be easier to. We should have done that the first time when we just put our butter into just a full stick. That would have been smarter.
Oh, mine's looking weird.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
No, bro, I'm looking at them.
Wrong.
I'm not. Am I wrong? Why are they pointy?
Why them shits got areolas? What the hell?
Well, then they're supposed to look like that.
Oh boy.
You know what? Well, let them keep going. Let them keep going.
Yeah, they're coming along though. They're perking up.
I think it's just the middle.
That's not the wording I should have used.
That's not the middle. The middle's
That's the
perfect.
wrong word.
Kind of rise a bit.
Gotta edge it a little bit more. Yeah.
That's not the right vocabulary.
The heat is like edge.
Oh, I don't know anymore. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, we still have Food Network on. We were trying to cheat halfway through, but they were cooking fried chicken instead, and that didn't really help us very much. After this, we need to add the flour, some baking powder, and some butter still free.
Make us a road song.
Oh, actually, hold on. They look kind of good now. They're starting to wrap up.
Hold up. All of them are looking all right. Ours haven't risen quite as much as yours.
I think that
they're locked. Mine's on that. They're coming up. We're on the come up. These may actually look somewhat like cupcakes.
That shit looks like.
It looked like vomit, bro.
No, that's not what I was looking for.
It's the butter. The butter needs to melt.
Jack, you know like when you're scrambling eggs, right? It's like,
But you cracked like the entirety of the shell into the scrambled eggs.
stop. Chat. This shit.
Higher.
The back.
Back. Yeah. Bring it back.
What is this?
It's the butter's not melted yet. That's you got the big hunk of butter there.
No, but it looks like some. It looks like you put too much butter. It looks like mashed potatoes with too much butter in it.
It said half cup of butter. I looked at it. That was a half cup of butter.
I believe you.
I read the recipe. It just hasn't melted yet. Don't whisk it too hard because it's got to stay fluffy still.
Bro, it's eggs.
And sugar.
I feel like if you. if you whisk it more, because there's no flour or anything in this yet. I feel like if you were like whisk it a bit harder.
All right, man. I trust you. You've got the best looking ones in there so far. I'm trusting your judgment on this.
I think the egg whites in it would make it fluffy. Because people have like whipped eggs on it, right?
Fluffing eggs is actually good. Okay. They said fluffing eggs is good, so yeah, go crazy. Go ham.
Here. Another bowl.
I can confirm that we did not cut up the bud before putting it in. We just stuck the whole stick in there.
Cut it up while it was kind of halfway.
Zach threw the whole stick in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we all made our first batches, we all did that.
Look, it's coming together nicely. Now we got more room to really just.
It's more like eggs.
No, we just whip the fuck out of it.
I'm just gonna make scrambled eggs off of that.
Yeah,
I don't even
honestly.
know why. How many eggs we got left? Give me a thing.
Bro's about to cook something up.
Bro was about to make pancakes, now he's going to make eggs. He's just making breakfast at this point.
I'm hungry.
Alright, yours are like snow cones. And that's like they're very like high peaks, but they haven't browned yet. Chris and I are rising nice, but also haven't browned yet. We're getting it.
We're getting there.
No, Dennis, give me a pin right now. I'm actually about to make a scrambled.
Under there.
Alright, now we're about to see if Chris can make a scrambled egg.
Can Chris make scrambled eggs without a recipe? It's really hard, Trent. The recipe is eggs.
Nice pan, bro.
Alright, hold on. This is coming together. This is starting to get some.
Fuck the bullshit, bro. These are not stick pans, right?
Yeah.
Bet. I hate that spray, but anyway.
Hold on. This is becoming something. Alright. We should put our dry ingredients in a separate bowl here. Like an intelligent individual.
I am hungry as shit.
Okay, so we need to mix the flour, baking powder, and salt. We need 2 cups of flour, half a teaspoon of salt. How much salt?
Yeah, did it.
And 2 teaspoons of baking powder.
Alright, so we need 2 cups of flour.
2 cups of flour.
Y'all are playing like this was a game. This is not an actual game.
Bro, fill that one just to the top line.
That's 2. Are we going to the big bowl?
Yeah, just big line. What you doing, miss? You don't want to hop up? She's very intrigued about what's going on, but she does not want to say hello. Yeah, big bowl. Oh. I was right with 2 cups of flour, though. I will say. I put 2 cups of flour.
I put 2 cups.
We had that one going for us. I had the right amount of eggs.
Zach, I don't mean to dox your birds right now, but you have a lot of fucking street feed in this bitch.
Hell yeah, dude.
I don't mean to dox your fridge, but like.
Alright, how much we needed salt and baking soda. Baking powder, whichever one we're using.
Yeah, baking powder.
How much baking powder?
2 teaspoons of baking powder and half teaspoon of salt.
You know what? I did not put enough,
Yeah, I don't think I put enough in either. I think I only put like a teaspoon.
and you said half a teaspoon of salt?
Half a teaspoon of salt. Look at this. Now we're getting somewhere. You guys were laughing and disgusted by a mixture a moment ago. Look at that. See?
I'm not gonna use
We're getting somewhere. That looks real. It's now fluffier. Got sugar. It's got eggs. It's got butter. Okay, actually, I think...
If I use the last 4 yellow.
Yeah, go for it. Take them all. You know, I gotta say, I have no idea how long he's been in there for. It's been 20 minutes now.
For sure we.
20 minutes? Yeah, 20 minutes. Oh, you're getting really fucking off. I don't think you're supposed to get off. It looks cornbread. They look like corn dude. Bro made fucking cornbread. But my guys, his pan ends here, his muffins end here. They are fucking mountains in there. I don't know how you did that.
It's a marvel.
I don't know. I think it's because it's on the top rack. That's all I'm gonna say. I think it's because I'm on the top rack. I might actually need to take mine out. I need to do two toothpicks. Two toothpicks. Got a couple of them up here. Look, see here. That's dry. Hey, yo, mine's dry. Mine and Chris. How about little dry? Hold mine. Hold mine. Really gonna see. That one not pulling up. Yours look done. We'll say. That one. You know, I might just say fucking take it. That's good. That's my cue to take it out. Hey, here's the big reveal. This is Griffin's. Look at that. Look at that. They're really tall, and they popped open a lot at the top, but they look edible.
I think they look great. I think they look fantastic.
Yeah, put it
Next to, I think it's next to Chris's stuff.
Yeah. I'm gonna get you something to sit those on. I'm not gonna say mine. They look dry as fuck. They do look very dry. They look dry as shit. Counter, and then you can get decorated. What? Oh shit! Yeah. I'm probably gonna let them cool down for a bit longer. Yeah, let them cool, let them go. We probably should have put this in a smaller bowl, I think, and then combined them in the big bowl. Not fine. I think it's good. Because we need to combine, yeah, the butter's now all melted. It looks good. We need to combine these with milk in between. So we need to get this into this and pour milk into it while we're pouring them. So we I think, swap the bowl here. I was making eggs. What's an egg? I'm not going in it well. Yeah, we can just a little bit. I think that's good right now. Whatever's at the top. Perfect. So now we put this mixture.
So how much milk total is it?
That all in there. Beautiful. We need 1 cup. You know, yours are coming together. Chris and I's, they didn't crack.
Yeah, I really don't know why mine cracked. Bakers, why did mine crack?
Yeah, anybody who knows what the fuck they're talking about. What went wrong here? Yeah. And then we just kind of pour them in together. Get the fuck out of it.
Like all of it, or are we doing
Like alternates. Alright. Okay.
we're supposed to mix it?
Yeah.
You see, the taller bowl, now we can actually like do a little bit dirty with it. This looks so much better than what we made.
Mix that in. Milk. Flour mix. Oh my god, look at this coming together. Holy shit, this looks like real batter. It's almost like having a recipe in actual proper measurements means something.
But you know what? Look how close mine looks.
It
No!
it is a different color.
It's because I added more vanilla. There's no vanilla in this. Change the color.
Yeah, stir in vanilla, so we need vanilla. Back there somewhere. 1 teaspoon of vanilla.
We just need 1 teaspoon?
I told you, you do not need much.
I think I did. Wait, no, I did 2. I did 2 teaspoons.
Gamers, this looks legit. After the disaster that was the last one, look at this. I'm telling you, you can do it. All I'm saying. Look at this. Ooh, you see that? Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. That looks like a real bad right there. Oh, this smells really good, actually.
I gotta cut you again.
It smells so much better than yours.
No, dude, mine smelled like that. Mine smelled like that. Shit ton of vanilla, but mine smelled like that.
Not smell like
It's been setting for a while now.
it is not particularly close.
And you got a hair of mine.
Oh no, how devastating. That one's gonna have a hair in it now for all the future uses.
And like that, so what are we doing the rest? Holy shit. Chris, these eggs look fucking amazing.
Oh.
Bro, those eggs are gas.
Do the test here.
I'm assuming you don't have to do.
No, just use that. Use the real plate. That's
Alright. Oh, this looks so good.
Try. Try. Pretty good.
Why do I crack so much?
Alright. Gamers, here is the reveal of mine. What do we think? Pretty good. Didn't quite brown out as much as I would have liked, but like
Yeah, mine are pale, like yours.
they they look like cupcakes. They decided to look like cupcakes.
These look like scrambled eggs.
You gotta put a little bit of pepper on that. A little bit of salt and pepper on that.
And this. Look at those. Also look like cupcakes. They got a little bit cracked on top. Not as much as strips.
Damn it. I was doing so good.
Hey, visual isn't the only category. They still gotta taste it.
And you know what? I'm just gonna get the top's gonna be covered with frosting in it.
Oh, look at the fucking. Damn. Goddamn, that just look good as hell. I mean, they're scrambled eggs.
You can't really mess that up. They're scrambled eggs.
Someone in the world messes those.
I can't lie. I haven't seen it.
All right. This looks good. This looks really good.
Oh,
Did mine not look like that?
it did.
It did.
It did, but we kept mixing it.
I think it's the over mixing that caused mine to crack a bit more. All right. Did we add everything?
Yeah, that was. We followed the instructions fully. All right. These ones in. The cups. Pop these ones in the oven.
I'll admire the work.
This.
I don't want to
made.
eat this shit.
Dude, if you
so
don't, I
good.
will. If you don't, I will.
Looks so good, bro.
Alright, let's get. Oh my god. Oh.
Look at that. It's like the same. Is it not?
Oh, now I'm thinking. No, I think it's a little more clumpy.
Yeah,
but otherwise,
that shit looks.
yeah, that's a lot smoother. Yours is clumpy.
Ah,
I think it's the mixing.
So close, chat. So close.
We almost had it. And probably the order, too.
Yeah, I think the order definitely fucked it up.
oh my god. Griffin, what you gotta do? I know it's a trailer, but that shit's good. Dude, so brother.
Bro.
Brother.
Was just you know. Nice.
Brother. That's gas.
Oh, yeah.
That's gas, bro. Brother. That's gas. Brother.
I guess.
No.
That's good shit.
You gotta dap me up for that shit.
Oh my god.
Or you gotta dap me up for that shit.
Oh, that was perfect. That might be the best thing we have all night.
I don't know, these backup cupcakes that we actually followed a recipe on.
I mean, like, I'm so close.
Yeah, I feel like yours are definitely the closest in terms of like consistency. Both Chris and I's were very liquidy.
And what's the same for the oven?
375. Bake for 18 minutes.
18?
18.
You know what?
We were pretty close.
We were close. Yeah, because we went to
And we were lower.
at a lower temp.
Yeah. Hey, I think they all things considered, they are better looking than I would have expected them to turn out.
It smelled a whole lot. A lot. It smelled like nothing. I think I just made bread.
None of us added enough sugar. We all made bread.
Honestly, yeah, we didn't add enough sugar. That's the issue.
Oh. We can clear enough space to see we can start decorating them too.
Oh,
We need to
yeah.
get some of the bowls and shit out of the way.
Well, these are going all going into the
Yeah,
sink
just
right
put
now.
them in the same thing.
Man, we're awful in the kitchen. You're supposed to clean as you go.
We were a little preoccupied,
Just a little.
struggling with everything else that was going on.
Bro was not getting it. He was coming. I'm just gonna move our batter balls back.
Yeah, just get it out of the way.
Until we can find out what exactly we need to do.
High key, all I needed was bacon. That would have been great. High key. That's all I needed. That's all.
I think there's bacon in there.
Too late. It's too late for that now. That part's over.
Watch out, Bubby. Zach, you made the biggest mess.
Bro, I have the smallest workspace.
Actually, so true.
He ain't wrong.
Yeah, I don't really think that was right there. A blindness.
Or this one.
This one's just still going there. 07s. 07s. Oh! Oh!
Keep clean.
Yeah.
Alright. They're looking good. These fresh ones. These are gonna be something. Alright, gamers. The fresh bat. Ready to go in. Look at that. They hold their shape. Solid. Good color. Goes in at 11 o'clock. 11:18. To get those out. All right. Who's ready to decorate some cupcakes?
I'm actually scared to like the taste.
You know what?
They're kind of good.
Honestly?
They smell pretty good.
All right. I'm gonna take one out, put it on a plate, and decorate specifically one, and then we'll taste test them.
Oh, yeah. Which one's been the easiest for me to decorate?
All right. Does anyone want a specific frosting?
I would like strawberry.
Strawberry? All you, my guy. You want vanilla or chocolate?
I'll do.
All right. I'm rocking the chocolate.
He's hot. Get in there. He's got it.
Bro, I just peeled my out. What the fuck you mean?
You know what? That was pretty good.
All right. Now we actually need it. Spoon. Alrighty. We're getting down to the moment of truth. We will soon have to eat.
Bro, how do you
Make sure you put stuff in it before you.
Before you cut it.
Yeah.
Yes. Of course. Oh, that smells good. Oh, God. Oh, why is piping this shit so, putting this in here so hard?
Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. I don't think I got enough into mine. Alright, I get a little more. Man, getting the chocolate is unfortunate. This looks like shit.
It does look like shit.
This looks wild.
Dude, this smells just like that Nesquik strawberry milk.
Ooh.
Wild.
All right.
Here we go. Oh, okay.
All right. Get a little bit of frosting on these bad boys,
Oh my god.
and we'll taste test them.
I'm gonna push it all to. That'll be good.
Pass those cinders down to whoever needs them. All right. Oh.
It does look like.
I'm making this into a turd just instead of spite.
You know what? I'm gonna try my. One about this.
Look at that steaming pile. Open wide, Chad. Doesn't that look appetizing?
Hey, hey,
Hey, no!
feel my.
Yeah.
Looks like unicorn shit. I'm scared to try this.
I think we have to all go in at once. Once he's done with his. You know what?
Yeah, it's fine.
You know what this turd needs?
Sprinkles.
The only thing that can save a turd is some sprinkles. Yeah, we definitely are gonna try each other's as well.
Oh, I'm scared.
This
I
is
trust you guys. I trust you guys.
at the very least, I think they're all cooked
I think they're,
and they're all edible.
I think they're all edible. That's the main thing.
Whether or not they taste okay,
I don't know.
we'll see.
Mine just smells like strawberry.
All right, get a little bit of corn in that turd.
Bro. Christ.
There we go. Now we're talking. Oh boy.
Hey, yo, this one's kind of sparkly. I don't know how much this one.
All right.
Yo.
It looks so good. That looks heat. I could go to a store right now and buy that and be okay with it. Like, taste-wise, we'll see. But visually,
Look at that.
I could go to a store right now today and buy that and be okay with that.
That's fire.
All right, let's peel this. Oh,
Oh, we gotta let the man get his sprinkles on there.
I'm just peeling mine back to take a bite, and I'm not sure I love what I'm seeing when I peel it back.
Oh.
Ooh. Okay, well, you know.
They're too round. That's why. I gotta say.
That's so.
What do we think? Be good, right? Oh god.
Hey, you know what? You know
Hey.
You know what? Dude. Feel that.
Honestly, like, I lost a little bit of mine, but it's nice. It's firm. It looks good.
Here's what we are working with. Look at that. We over here cooking and shit. That looks good. That's like perfect.
That's a cupcake. If ever I've seen one.
I think Chris's might be the best looking.
Yeah, his came out looking like cupcakes. They rose a little bit, but they stayed rounded on the top. All right.
No, hold on.
Ready?
Oh,
Yeah, I take it.
look at that.
Dude, that looks like a cupcake.
Mine's so flat. Mine's a fucking
Mine all
hockey puck.
underneath the icing.
Mine's a fucking hockey puck.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Wait, hold up. Hold up.
Okay. You know,
That's not terrible.
I want to get one of just the.
Yeah, I need to eat just the actual cake part.
Okay,
It's not bad.
listen. I think this is pretty incredible because I have managed to make a cupcake that does not taste like literally anything at all. There is no flavor in this whatsoever.
Mine's also kind of lacking flavor.
This thing has no flavor whatsoever.
Yeah, vanilla actually did nothing.
No, I'm gonna finish this.
Yeah, I'm
It's
gonna
good. I think it's safe to finish.
I'm not upset about that.
I think this is a W, all things considered.
Yeah.
I could serve these to someone, and I don't think they would like be very upset. They'd be kind of like, "Oh yeah, you're not the greatest baker," but like they wouldn't be pissed at me, and that was the bar that I had set.
I'm steady getting
All right, now we gotta.
I want to take a taste of just the cupcake of yours.
Let me wash my hands real quick. I know we've been looking at fingers, but I'm not gonna scratch it. Just a little bit.
I'm amazed, honestly.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked.
This shit,
That's actually.
it genuinely just has no taste.
I mean, the fact that we just. It's not bad. These aren't.
Yeah. All right. Here y'all go. Enjoy. Whoever wants a bite.
I'm just gonna hand you mine in this. Oh, we're split?
Yeah, just.
Dude, that's not cooked all the way.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it's just. I don't know if moist is the right word.
It tastes like nothing.
It's like a little bit more.
I'm impressed by that.
Cake wise tastes has like a hint more flavor.
Okay.
I don't think it's bad. I think it turned out okay, all things considered.
You guys want to get a little nibble of mine?
I love the peak of yours. It's so tall. Ooh. It's good. It's crisp on the top. That's good. That's actually really good. That one I think might be a winner. Taste-wise, and the crisp on top is really nice. Yours got a little more crisp on top. I think yours was on the top rack, so it got a little more crisp. Mm-hmm. That's good.
Okay, but Chris has the moistness.
Oh yeah.
You see that? That's like,
Oh, that's good.
that's what you
Tear.
want.
That's a good tear. Chris, you made pancakes.
Yeah.
There is no sweetness in this whatsoever.
I know.
I was looking
I
at
said it.
what it was.
I said it.
This is literally a pancake.
But it's not a terrible pancake.
These are all good.
It's genuinely good. It is not a cupcake, but it's very good. That would be very good pancake batter.
Because, so what I noticed about all these, yours is like very close to cornbread. What it seems like, like taste wise.
Yeah. Very like it's very mild cornbread.
Yeah. Mine, in my opinion, is just too dense. Like, it
Yeah.
looks spongy, but it's just very dense to tear through. And Chris makes like pancakes.
Crispy fucking pancakes.
I mean, pancake better, guys.
I mean, my vote. You win.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
I think Griff wins.
This.
That is my vote. I cast.
There are areas where we're like, okay, they did good.
Yeah, I think everyone had a different thing that they did better, which is interesting.
No, because I'm gonna say, Chris got the moistness down.
No, those are really good. They have a good tear. They chew well. They're not too like chewy. They're not too like flaky. They're good. They taste like a pancake. Like unironically, it tastes just like a pancake.
When I was like, oh, shit.
And then mine is literally just like it's good, but it doesn't have anything that it's like really great
I
at.
think it's just missing sugar. That's it.
I think a little more sugar, and I think a little less mixing, and mine is probably okay and better ordering.
Yeah, I think mine is just the ordering and also probably more sugar. I don't know though.
Love to see how these ones turn out. They're coming along.
So out of all these cupcakes, who are we gonna give these to the neighbors to?
No.
Do we want to give these to the neighbors?
I think these are the ones that they would be the least upset with.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, okay.
They'd be like, okay, they're just kind of okay cupcakes, like nothing that special. Those ones they would be confused because they would bite in and be like,
Well,
that's not a cupcake. And those they would just be like, oh, okay, I guess they tried.
Frosting on cornbread.
I suppose they put some effort in.
I gotta say, these are actually pretty solid.
I think we cooked.
We literally cooked.
Gamers, we did it.
We did it.
We made cupcakes without a recipe. To an extent.
We'll make this up with a recipe.
Yeah, and those ones are gonna be better for sure, but they've got like 3 minutes left on them.
They look so much better.
they look so much better. It is night and day, truly.
They're actually round. And they're not cracked. Ah, damn. That was a lot of fun though, fellas. This was a lot of fun.
This was sick. I can't believe it worked.
It worked. We did.
I fully expected to bite into that and be like, ooh. Like, that's
No, we
not good.
Yeah.
Round of applause for everybody here.
Just wait for these cupcakes.
We got just a couple minutes on those ones and they'll be good to go.
I'm gonna have another cupcake, honestly. I'm gonna eat another one of mine.
It is incredible I'm genuinely impressed that there's just nothing. This is, if I made a water flavored cupcake, that is what this is. It's just, it's nothing. Y'all want anything to drink?
Dude, water would be awesome.
Chris, you want anything?
Yeah, water cool.
Oh god, I'm really fucking this one up. How did I do so well on the first one?
This was the first one.
This looks so bad now. But you know what? I'd still eat this.
Really?
I did so much worse with this one.
I learned that I just make pancake batter from scratch. Great.
This hit the spot.
You gotta take the wrapper off. You gotta take the label off.
You're right, we can't give any free advertising to water company.
Yeah. We're not gonna fall for big water.
Down with big water.
That's crazy. Someone really was just like, yeah, let's put this water in the bottle. It's like, we know water's free, but
What if it wasn't? Can you imagine?
let's give them this. Let's sell them on like, yeah, it's cleaner, shit, and purified.
This was bottled in like Fiji.
Okay, it's the spot right about now. I will say, mine is a little dry. So the water helps.
Yeah, this helps a lot. I'm drinking like almost half my water.
Alright. Yes, those. I'm gonna get another toothpick.
We don't want to Bro, these look good. Oh, perfect. That's done. They're done. Those are perfect.
Folks, what can I say? As it turns out, if we, get a recipe, these turn out pretty good. Look at that. Ooh, it's almost like
Using a recipe.
using a recipe for something you don't know how to make is better than not using one.
Here you go, close this.
You should finish. Oh, no. You got nothing else to make.
What do we do with the rest of the batter?
Your friend's Chris. We can make the pancakes.
This one's
This
Chris.
one.
Oh yeah, let's make pancakes.
Dad, put up the fucking skillet right now. Make a couple of pancakes.
You know what? I'm down.
Where's the syrup? Where's the syrup? Yo, that's serious. Holy shit. Go for it. Fuck. Oh, this is dead ass happening. This is
We're gonna see how good your pancake batch is, Chris.
fuck.
We want to see if we can make pancakes with all of our.
Just try it.
Like, who actually made the best pancakes?
Changing the competition. We made one kind of cake. Who made the best two kinds of cakes?
Where's the maple syrup?
I was looking for the syrup.
I don't know. This isn't even my pantry for real.
With that. Oh, good lord.
So when are we making bacon?
Just keep adding. Well, we made a fucking full breakfast. You made eggs.
You're gonna make eggs.
We're making pancakes.
Higher though.
Get some bacon out and just make a whole ass breakfast.
Dennis making breakfast at like almost midnight.
You make a fire. I don't know what y'all talking about. Let's just work.
That goes crazy.
Oh darn. Just looking at this bag, it's so much better. Because like I think the only ratio I messed up on was just the sugar. Honestly, we could get an actual build the rest of that are into one, and those be the ones people like give neighbors. Oh, later, yeah. That looks like pancake batter. I think that's good. That's good. The big ass pancake. I'm just trying to use a lot of it. That looks like a pancake. I don't know if they can see that.
I don't think they can see that from here, but it dead ass looks like a really big pancake.
Okay, you know, my only concern now is breading stuff.
Yeah, it's a little loose.
But you know what? Actually, it's not.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
I got a small pancake. Right?
You got a baby pancake.
That one's gonna be for Bubba.
Oh hell yeah!
Now we're just making pancakes.
That is a big ass. I was trying to like, can I just use a lot of it? But it's a really fucking big pancake.
You know what? We'll just cut into pieces. No, dude, this is actually looking. It's bubbling like a normal pancake would.
Oh, dead ass made pancake batter.
Do we have a? Oh yeah, we got a spatula. Yeah. This is fucking nuts, dude.
Bro may not have won at the cupcake competition, but he's about to win at this one. I can promise you that.
Chris, you might have made some legit pancake batter.
Bro, look,
It's bubbling like it normally should.
it's literally a pancake. Bro, I'm about to pour some of this in a waffle iron.
That looks like pancake batter, doesn't it?
That's
It's got the right color and everything. They're literally pancakes, exactly. What are you doing? What are you doing, crazy girl? You're upset because it's past your bedtime and everybody's still up and running around.
Yeah, it's past my bedtime.
Right?
Well, this past mine too, but who cares?
Oh, when do we split?
Pretty soon.
Soon.
Yeah.
You guys like to do like the test?
Yo.
Yeah, yo, really?
We'll leave it a little bit longer. It's not golden yet.
Yeah. This thing is huge. I might need a second spatula. No pro chef. I'm not a, flip the pan kind of person.
How did we go from pancake to pancake? Like, from cupcakes to pancake? And now I'm making like almost full breakfast at this point. Like,
Oh, looks good. Oh,
yo! Let's fucking go.
that's insane! Oh my god!
Fucking go.
Now I'm scared to try some other batters.
the other ones might not go as well, but this is incredible.
Dad has made pancake.
Bro is just competing in the wrong category.
I made it from scratch. That's scratch. That's not even from a box. That's not even...
Wait.
Go for it.
I might have not taken the dub in the right competition, but I took a dub right here.
There's a dub to be had.
A dub was taken. 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 A dub was taken was wonderful. Looks.
We take our W's wherever we can get them. No matter where that may be, we will take the W's where we can get them.
I don't even know what to say.
That's fine.
Ooh. Ooh.
Folks,
Ooh. Ooh.
pancake.
That's a good ass pancake. That's a good ass pancake.
No way. This is literally perfect. My guy made a perfect pancake. It's literally.
Holy shit!
Prozac, bring that.
Dude, it smells like pancakes.
I'm saying.
Bring that sucker over here real quick. Just a little.
A little butter on there.
Oh, you got syrup?
What is? I don't know if he does. Let's find out.
This is about to be the most perfect looking pancake ever.
Let me put syrup in the fridge.
They open it.
Oh, yeah, syrup in the fridge. Brother. Is that Mrs. Buttersworth?
It used to be.
No, that's Aunt Jemima. What used to be Aunt Jemima.
Oh. Oh my god.
Folks, that right there is a picture perfect pancake.
That is a perfect looking pancake. Laws.
I don't know how he did it, but goddamn, he did it.
What can I say? What can I say?
Those?
I'm just gonna take it out.
So, okay. That's a funny thing. That's a really fucking good pancake. That's a very good tasting pancake.
Brother. Oh,
How did you manage to perfectly?
what did I do? That's phenomenal.
That's really good. Holy shit.
Yo!
Fucking phenomenal.
Oh.
Bro, I made perfect eggs. I made a perfect pan. Bro, I'm cooking right now.
Bro, I'm gonna make breakfast.
Hey, y'all need y'all breakfast cooked? Gosh, y'all.
That's insane, actually. Look, this is actually a perfect pancake.
No, genuinely. Like, if I ordered this at a nice restaurant for breakfast, I would be like, oh, damn. And them cooks back there really know what the fuck they're doing.
Hi, guys. I heard you enjoyed the pancakes.
Write the recipe down. That's the fun part. We don't know what the fuck we did.
What recipe? There was none.
Bro was just making shit.
Actually, the best pancake I've had ever. I can't even lie.
Hey, Bubby?
That's incredible. The recipe is the entire VOD. True. Just watch through the VOD and just watch what he does the entire time, and you'll have a perfect pancake recipe.
Flour measurement? I don't know. I just dumped that shit in there.
How much vegetable oil? I don't know.
Like 2 tablespoons at least.
Maybe that's it. Maybe the vegetable oil is the difference.
Yes. Like, this is actually just a good pancake. It's like a phenomenal pancake.
I'm incredibly impressed. All right, at this point now, I have to try.
Are you trying with?
This is mine.
Yeah. Let's not make one as big though.
Yeah. I wanted to just burn through a lot of it. Definitely should go.
Watch us all just make good pancake batter.
So,
Butter with the butter.
Oh,
get that shit.
this is not.
Oh god.
That is not going the same.
You're dripping it on the dog.
Birthday pancake. We made, okay, so hi Proto. We made cupcakes from blind with no recipe. We all made cupcakes. They were all kind of mid, but none of them were bad. Then we were like, hey, yours kind of tastes like pancakes. And so we decided to pour his and make a pancake out of it. And it was the most perfect pancake you've ever seen, and it was delicious. I don't know.
I kid you not. 10 out of 10 pancake. It was fucking phenomenal.
I don't know how we managed to pull that off. And now we're trying with mine, and
I mean, it's kind of bubbling.
it's trying.
It wants to.
It wants to bubble. Fucking. Nugget over here. Oh, we got hella dishes to go through. Be fine.
Yeah. His also spread so nicely to a nice like circle. Mine did not. Mine is a fucking oval. Mine is a lot thicker than his, which is also part of it. You had the thinnest batter, so you were able to pour it out and make a pancake. Griffin's, yours will be a fucking pile. Yours is the thickest, which is right for this and wrong for
Horrible for the pancake.
That's so funny. It's bubbling though. It's coming through. We're getting somewhere. I tried to take a towel to her back, but she was very otherwise occupied. She's got a little like knot in her hair too.
Oh, right
Up there, yeah, on her head. She got into something. She hasn't had a bath in a couple days, and so she's got some kind of can't get worked out. All right, we wait on this pancake. Are you wanting to make a pancake out of yours?
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, might as well, right? Yeah, just use as much of it as we can.
We're not going to waste a whole bunch.
That's the goal. Is use as much as we can of this batter. Mine, my cupcakes were very impressive in the fact that they tasted like nothing at all. They were truly just there. They existed. So we'll see what happens when they turn into a pancake. This is...
I don't know what the fuck.
Oh.
I don't like what's happening over here. I'm gonna be honest with you.
It's like kind of separating. I mean, do we want to see what the underside is looking like right now? Or do we want to wait a bit?
I mean, the middle is still looking hot. But I'm trying to let it go a little bit more, but it might have to.
Dude, actually, mine and yours might be good for like crepes.
Not too bad.
You know what? That's not bad.
All things considered.
That's not terrible. It's not as good as Chris's. It's not bad.
I feel like we're on a little bit of a different bar of Chris's. Chris's is like far and away
Much better.
really good pancake. Ours are both gonna be kind of but we'll try it.
Dude, mine's gonna be shit. It's gonna be shit.
That is incredible.
And from what I'm noticing, yours smells a lot different than Chris's.
It doesn't smell much worse.
Like, I want to say quite burning just yet, but it's close.
It's trying to burn. It is doing its darndest to burn up.
Like, it smells familiar. I don't know what it is though. I don't know.
Mystery food X ass pancake over here. What the hell have I created? What did you buy today? What'd you get?
Cat buying shit? What you buy? Hey yo.
Dutch
A
oven.
Dutch oven.
Ooh. Okay. I expect to see the cat soup return baking stream then. All I'm saying.
Have 3 guest stars right here.
True.
We're actually paid actors.
Yeah, we're the paid actors. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
He paid us.
I really just needed somebody to come on for this. It
found-
would have been a lot more awkward doing it by myself.
He
But I
found
was
us on the
like,
street.
bro, I went to Craigslist and couldn't find it anyway, so I just started driving up down the road until I found some guys.
Yeah, he picked us up at an Olive Garden parking lot. Like,
Oh,
oh,
That,
oh.
you know?
I mean,
Of the two pancakes, let's be impartial here, guys.
yeah, we'll be impartial.
Of the two pancakes, you remember what Chris said, right? Would you prefer that or
No one's immediately jumping at.
looks like
That's what it was. It looks like naan. It looks like naan.
It really does. Why the fuck did I make naan? All right. Well, you know,
butter chicken and rice.
You got chicken and rice.
we just keep making fucking different meals, trying to use the same batter.
Oh, must have.
All right. Well,
Alrighty. We're not as excited to try this one.
I gotta say, ooh, that does not cut very well. I don't know whose fork this is.
I don't remember what I did with my fork.
I think it was yours.
Oh,
Mine was the big fork over
yeah,
here.
not really. No.
Well,
You didn't even have to.
down the hatch.
You didn't have the butter to it.
Bro didn't even have the butter.
Right.
Bro, it doesn't cut it easily. Bro, I might need a knife. Over here.
That laugh is scary.
Not bad.
Bro, what the fuck? Is this caramel? No, I'm lying.
No, I gotta say, it's actually not bad.
It's not bad, but it's definitely not good. Like, it's a solid like 4 out of 10.
Like Chris, I'm gonna say probably a 10 out of 10.
That
This is probably, I give this a 6.
it's got a very strange consistency that I don't like.
Because the flavor's good. It actually tastes a little burnt. That's just because
Yeah.
how long it was on there for.
And it was because of how weird it cooked.
Like, you know, I don't hate it. You know, this is something I would expect to like.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. I was like,
this is the Waffle House as pancake.
okay, Waffle might be gas, so I ain't gonna lie.
It depends on which Waffle House you go to.
If them boys fighting, you know that food gonna be good.
All right. You still have 8 hunks of butter in your house. Bro still has huge floating
I actually might turn my blind eye to that one. Actually,
hunks of butter.
It'll be fine. Butter's flavor.
We still need to put butter on the pancake. It'll be in the pancake.
We don't need to put butter on it.
Is it even fine? That's fine right there. That's
Not pork.
when you're like, oh, you see the
butter right there.
There's a huge fucking hunk of butter.
There's a piece of butter that's probably like this big, just sitting right on top of it.
That one came out even weirder of a shape than mine too.
Chris's was like perfectly round. Yours said was like kind of eh. Mine is oblong.
That shit looked like Illinois.
oh, it's crazy.
But you know what? It's
getting there.
it's getting there.
Spread a little bit.
Spreading a little bit. It's kind of bubbling. I think we all can make decent pancakes.
That was not the goal of the day, mind. But we all made decent pancakes.
The best thing we've had tonight is Chris's pancakes. And
Oh,
that was not the plan for tonight.
There was no plan to make any pancakes, but that was the best thing that we made tonight. We haven't tried the, they should have cooled by now, so we can still try the real cupcakes too. The ones that we had a recipe for.
We're gonna have to split it. I'm getting full.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to split a cupcake.
No, I will absolutely split one with you. Cut that shit right down the middle.
Oh.
Alright, it's slowly looks like it's trying to bubble.
It's not bubbling very well.
I think it's too thick. It's having a hard time bubbling up. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
It's gonna be so bad.
You're just gonna be so sweet, dude. You're the sweetest of the three.
But you know what? I'm not complaining about it.
Yeah, sweet pancake isn't a bad thing. That's the one that we pop some powdered sugar on top of.
Yeah.
Oh, holy shit. Alrighty. We just are waiting on this one. Do we want to try the, while we're waiting for this one to cook, we can try the, we're gonna decorate. We just want to try it? Yeah, do you want to eat it straight, or?
Yeah, I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah. I'm fine.
Ooh,
That looks perfect.
that is
Actually perfect.
that is good looking right there. It's a good looking cupcake. Ooh. 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 That looks good.
This might be perfect.
Yeah.
This looks pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's really good. Mm-hmm.
But you know what I gotta say? It's not super sweet.
It's really not. I think yours are honestly sweeter.
I think mine is sweeter. It's because I have more vanilla extract in mine.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did twice as much, but not enough sugar. We should probably flip that.
Oh no, it's been sitting there for a minute because it was on low heat. I turned it up to this.
You turned it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think it's even remotely done. Or maybe.
It's close. Give it an eye like 10 seconds.
What's probably what saved it was that the thing was so hot still.
Well, I think this was a success. All things considered.
Everything we've made tonight's been edible. That's the only thing I care about. I don't care if it's good or not. It's just
They didn't have faith. They did not have faith in us when we were in the cooking stage with that batter. They were roasting us. They were laughing at us. They were getting their kicks in, but we made some good ass shit tonight.
So actually, Cat was on this side though.
what are they making on the TV or something?
Bro, making pancakes.
Wait, is that?
That's not what that is. That's not.
I don't think it's
I
pancake.
don't think it is, but
It kind of looked like
it
pancake.
does kind of look like it.
Wait, no, that's naan. That's totally naan.
Ain't no way. It looks pretty similar to mine.
Yeah. Dude, no, like that. Look what they're making.
That's dead ass. That's not.
What's it? Pita bread.
Huh? It might be. It looks a little too, like, flat to be pita. Hey, not me. True. Daisuke, you were a real one. You believed in us.
Full faith in them.
I thought we were gonna knock it out of the park, and we did. We really crushed this shit, fellas. We crushed this. What might really just not cut.
We probably should finish yours before we plate mine.
I'm just gonna take enough of it that I can put it onto my smaller plate over there. Oh, oh. That side is worse. That side is decidedly worse. The part that I took a bite of is much tougher.
It's not the greatest. It's edible, but not the greatest.
We're just gonna
Just throw that in the trash.
It might be.
That might be good.
I think it's done. It's smoking a bit.
Oh, no.
stuck with this now.
Bro,
Just grab it.
That was, yeah.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
That thing is bad.
It didn't even bend.
Here's the reveal. This fell between the grades of the fucking.
I know we might beat this, but like, look at this shit. Hold up.
It fell between the grades of the thing.
It won't bend.
Straight.
It's so dense. Look at this. There's no wiggle.
It doesn't bend.
There's no wiggle. No shit whatsoever.
Dig in, fellas. Dig in. We might need a little bit of butter sifting though.
You know, it's yours. I want you to have the first bite.
All right.
This one, we might need a knife for. I don't know if the forks are gonna get through that.
Shit, it didn't even jiggle. It was stiff.
I'm still on the. That shit fell in between the grate.
Give me that
and
grate.
It was still. It hit the grate like this and was standing straight on its end.
That shit had no twerk to it. That was just straight back.
That's some melted butter in the Hey, hand me the script.
Yeah, we're gonna need some of that too.
That shit was just straight back.
Listen, it's gonna be a cake.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a real cake. All right.
Oh god.
Dig in, buddy. You enjoy that. You've earned it. For winning at the cupcake competition, this is your prize.
It looks like cake.
Yours did get overmixed a lot, like mine too, so it's probably very.
It's not bad.
Taste was good. It's
It's very tough.
tough, which is not a word I like to use to describe a pancake, but the taste is good.
Taste is good.
I am. I'm gonna work.
We're using steak terminology for pancakes, guys. That's what
I'm having a chew to get through this thing, man. Like,
Pretty good bite of this. Come on, man.
taste is really good though. I'll give it up.
It's got that butter falling off it. That's like.
Well, I think we did it.
We did it.
We succeeded. Can you believe that? The three of us made cupcakes. I hardly can. I didn't think we were gonna do it. So let's see who we have that we can go say hello to. Send a little raid on by. We can go see Drewby, who is playing The Hobbit on PS2.
Go to console.
We could go see Seahorse playing Like a Dragon. We can go see Topo doing some VGC. We can go see... We don't have anybody else doing like a, cooking stream, unfortunately. I was wondering if we had anything that we could get to that was, in a similar vein, and unfortunately that is not the case. We could go see Manikadobo, who is playing Zelda. We could go see Rimage playing Don't Starve Together. We could go see Jim Tasty playing Halo. Any preferences? Any inclinations one way or another? I don't know. All right. Well, I guess I know you've been there recently, but let's go to Drewby. That's a good, easy place to go. Know that that's always going to be good. Raid Drewby. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for hanging out tonight. This was a ton of fun. This was a crazy stream. Thank both of you guys for coming out here and doing this shit. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for all the birthday wishes. This was a lot of this weekend was great. I had a lot of fun with everything that was going on. We will be back probably Wednesday, I would say, with more Zelda. And then Saturday with something. We'll see what comes up, what happens, etc. Have a good night. Take care, everybody. Send Drew a lot of love for us. And I will see you all very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.